Hey, folks, welcome to another edition of Dawg Walk Talk presented to you by DawgsHQ. As always, I'm your host, Jake Roos, and not with me today, Palmer Tom. So if you don't like Palmer, that's good news for you. But this is a recruiting focused show. We wanted to take some time to set aside because Georgia, with a huge matchup, hosting the Kentucky Wildcats this weekend on Saturday in Sanford Stadium, 3:30 kickoff on CBS. Going to be an absolute madhouse. College game day coming into town. SEC Nation going to be there. I'll tell you this. That's the kind of atmosphere you want to impress recruits. And Georgia better be focused on impressing recruits as much as they better be focused on what they put on the field, because this is an absolute loaded weekend for the players that are in the next and upcoming classes. Want to touch on a few names kind of throughout this show, really just kind of give you a preview of some of the guys you need to be watching for and a little update probably on where they stand as well. So let's dive right in. I think probably the name everybody's going to be watching this weekend. There are a few, trust me, and we'll get to them, but I think it's Luther Burden personally. You're talking about one of the top receivers in the nation, a guy who's got Georgia right in the thick of it, Missouri there also. It feels like those are the two teams that this one's coming down to. Georgia with a chance this weekend, I think, to really set themselves apart. Let's see what they do in the passing game. I think that that's something Burden's going to be tuned into, but this is a situation with this kid where I think Georgia is right there and can pull away with a good performance and an impressive OV on Saturday. Now, Missouri cannot be discounted. All right. That's the home state school. That's a school that's really poured in heavily, but let's call it what it is. Missouri has really struggled this year to kind of find consistency, lost some games maybe they shouldn't have. So Georgia really sitting in a nice position, I think, to elevate themselves. And quite frankly, they need Luther Burden. They don't have anybody quite that highly ranked. He's just a different kind of cat. They're going all in on this one. I expect Georgia to make a heavy, heavy push for Luther Burden this weekend. And if things go to plan, I think it's really, really strong chance that he could end up a Bulldog. We'll see. Something to review on Monday over at DawgsHQ. So get over there and check it out for sure. We'll have the latest insight. Outside of him, you got to be thinking about another St. Louis kid, and that's in the 2023 class. His teammate over there at East St. Louis, and that's Miles McVay, another guy coming into town this weekend, obviously coming along with Luther, going to get the full experience. This is a guy Georgia's been on for some time now, and for good reason. This kid is an absolute mammoth. Looks like Jordan Davis right now as a junior in high school. He's got that kind of size, that kind of big. I think that he's a kid they feel good about right now in the early goings of it. He was just in Florida a couple of weeks ago. I think that this kid, they've got a chance this weekend to impress, really kind of push their stock a little further, because this won't be the first time Miles McVay has been on campus. So keep that name in mind. He's another guy we'll be revisiting down the line, certainly, once things wrap up in Athens this weekend. Mykel Williams. I know that's a name that's familiar to all Georgia fans and should be, because he's visited about as much as Kirby Smart. I mean, it seems like he's on campus about that much. No stranger to campus, tons of prior visits, was here all kinds of times over the summer. I think he's been to at least 2 or 3 games this season. Getting him back on campus this week. Yes, he is a USC commit. I think we can probably all discern USC in a little bit of turmoil, a little bit of upturn, just kind of figuring out what the next step is. I think that that's beneficial to Georgia in a big way when it comes to Mykel Williams. It's going to be interesting, I think, is Georgia's pitch to him. How do they kind of see him fitting into this defense? He's told us kind of both things, and he's got a body that could kind of go either way, whether that's outside linebacker, whether that's playing with a hand in the ground, maybe splitting in between those. Reminds me a little bit of the size Brenton Cox had when he came in, and obviously has been an impactful player since his transfer to Florida. I think Georgia in a very, very strong standing when it comes to Mykel Williams. Just another good sign that he's back on campus this weekend. Dan Lanning deserves a lot of credit there. Kirby Smart deserves a lot of credit there. And USC probably deserves a little credit as well for making a new coaching hire at some point. Outside of those guys, Jordan James also headed into town. One of Georgia's premier backs in this class, 2 commits, Branson Robinson and Jordan James. Both guys will be on campus this weekend. I think that that's a really good sign. I think it's good to have those two guys in there. This is a thunder and lightning kind of combo to me. I think that James, to me, very elusive in the open field, a guy who can make you miss, a great receiver out of the backfield. And then, gosh, when you're talking about Branson Robinson, it's about power, it's about size, and it's about speed. This is a kid who's a total package, but he can really bring that hammer. I think he's a guy who can come in and do some of the things that we've seen Zamir White do this year, as far as just grinding out those hard yards and getting them when they matter. Look for both of those guys to be on campus this weekend and recruit heavily for the Dogs. I think that those guys can be compelling. Everybody knows Georgia for their run game. Those guys, two of the best in this class in 2022. I think having them on campus and talking to other guys about the offense, what they see, the future of this, the connections they have with coaches, I think that's going to be very impactful for some of these other guys. Taking the rest of the list in here, a couple other commits coming in. CJ Washington, a guy I don't think gets talked about enough in this class, but with Jalen Walker and CJ Washington, I think you have a dynamic inside linebacker duo. That's a couple of guys who are, first off, physical specimens, just total freaks when it comes to, how they're built, but also a lot of speed, a lot of great play recognition, guys who could probably, play other positions if they needed to. CJ Washington, a guy who can get out there and does it for the running back spot for Cedartown. So both of those guys, I think, have been key players on defense in this 2022 class. I think that both of them being on campus, again, like with James and Robinson, that's good for those defensive guys to hear their pitch, see what's got them interested, and realize, hey, look, these are two of the best guys in the nation, not only from a physical standpoint, from a ranking standpoint, and from a talent standpoint. What's got them drawn into Georgia? Maybe I need to check into it a little further as well. Interesting name that I thought popped up on the list. Peyton Kirkland is a guy that I'll be watching this weekend. And I find that interesting because he's one of the top offensive linemen in 2023, massive kid, and a guy Georgia offered early on in this process. However, recently dropped a top list and Georgia wasn't included. And that was a bit of a surprise. I thought Georgia would be kind of a shoo-in to make that list. Interesting that he would visit so soon thereafter. I expect Georgia can make a push to get back into that list. Let's see about that after this weekend. I think Peyton Kirkland, a guy people need to know. If you don't already, watch out for him. Other 2023 guys coming to mind right off the top, I'd say Seven Cloud, an interesting prospect, not one of Georgia's commits that's talked about a lot in the 2023 class, but big-bodied defensive tackle, a kid who can get in there and really plug a hole for you. Be interesting to see how that one goes as well. Dylan Lonergan coming over from Brookwood, that's a big one. He's a guy that Georgia really likes in that 2023 class at the quarterback spot. Now, obviously, I think Arch Manning, the name everybody wants, certainly, but Lonergan, one of those guys who's just kind of right there on the periphery, and it's a great quarterback class, but he's got all the tools. You're talking about, a big arm, playmaking ability, a guy who has the lineage, the DNA, the legacy. Dad played at Penn State, and also one of the top-rated baseball prospects in America as well for that 2023 class. Dylan Lonergan back on campus this weekend. He's been here a couple of times, likes what he's heard from Todd Monken and company. Be interesting to see if Georgia can boost things further there. A couple other 2022 names to watch out for. Kristin Miller is a guy that everybody should be familiar with at this point. If you're not, one of the best defensive tackles in this class out of Cedar Grove High School, where Georgia's done quite well, pulling in Kayan Lee and Carlton Madden pretty recently from Cedar Grove. Kristin Miller, another guy that they want really, really badly. And I think Georgia in a really good spot to get him personally. I think that this is a situation where, USC's involved in this. Oklahoma's involved in this. Ohio State's involved in this one. Kristin, though, a lot of time on his side, plans on committing at the All-American game. And, being that he's got Georgia commits all over the field there in Cedar Grove alongside him, I think that can be really impactful as well. Let's see here. Jacob Hood will be in town. Been a while, I think, since we've seen Jacob Hood. Be interested to see him in person as well. A massive offensive tackle commit for that 2022 class. Jaheim Singletary, thought that was an interesting name to see pop back up. His second visit in as many opportunities. He was here for the Arkansas game as well. That's a guy Georgia pushing very heavily on, and rightfully so. One of the top defensive backs in this class, Jaheim Singletary. I've got Georgia as the odds-on favorite right now when it comes to his recruitment. Now, not saying it can't change. He was a former Ohio State commit. Florida really likes him as well. Georgia going heavily in on Jaheim Singletary. I really like their chances. I think that they may be the leader right there. A couple of interesting names to pop up as well. Traquan Figgins, a guy that we really felt confident about Georgia's chances with back in, I guess, February, March, seemed like a shoe-in maybe for the 2022 class. Things kind of fall off, kind of fizzle out a little bit. He ends up going with Miami in an initial commitment, and then just recently decides to pull back from the Hurricanes. Now he's headed to Athens this weekend. Does this mean Georgia's back in the fold? It's going to be interesting to see. Certainly, that's a question that we will definitely try to get to the bottom of. I hesitate to make a prediction on that one just yet, because it felt like it came maybe from a little bit more from Georgia's side, that initial kind of severing of interest or downgrading of interest, as it were. But this is honestly a class where Georgia needs defensive backs in the worst way. They're losing several guys in that defensive backfield. You're losing Chris Smith. You're losing Latavius Brini. You're going to lose Amir Speed. You're probably going to lose Lewis Cine to the draft as well. That's a lot of experience on that back end, and they're already kind of thin back there. How do they make these numbers work? Well, recruiting, always the answer, right? This is a situation where I could see them going in on another guy like this, a name that maybe has been off the radar a little bit, and that they feel that they can get back in with. Another guy who falls into that category, Emory Floyd out of South Carolina, or out of Hillgrove, but a South Carolina commit, I should say, and a guy who well known for his speed, can really blaze it, can really get out there and make things happen. He's been in Athens. I think this will be the third time this season. So either he's bored and it's easier to get here than it is Columbia, or there's some smoke going on. I'm not sure which it is just yet. Something to watch for down the line, though, definitely with Emory Floyd, because like I said, such a premium on those defensive backs. Speaking of defensive backs, in 2023, you got A.J. Harris, who is one of the top prospects in the nation in 2023, a kid who can absolutely do it all. 30 plus offers already. Everybody wants a piece of him. Ohio State's really in there. Alabama's in on this kid. I mean, it's a kind of a who's who list when it comes to AJ Harris. Now he's out of Phoenix City there in Alabama, but originally from Georgia, a really close friend of Pierce Spurlin, knows those Georgia commits in that 2023 class pretty well. I think AJ Harris is a guy to keep an eye on, because Georgia definitely wants a piece of him. He's definitely shown a lot of interest. And like I said, there are a lot of ties that go into all of this. So watch out for that name as well. Tony Mitchell, also on campus, one of the top defensive backs, a safety, maybe a corner in that 2023 cycle. But regardless of where he plays, a five-star guy, a guy everybody wants a piece of. Tony Mitchell, the real question, can they pull him out of Alabama? He plays down there in Alabaster Thompson High School, coached by Jake Gaines, mind you, former Georgia great. But how can Georgia kind of position themselves for a guy like Tony Mitchell? Will be interesting to see if the big game atmosphere, and if they are able to pull out a win, how that benefits them as well. Look, we could keep going on this all day, all right? I mean, the list is that deep, it's that big, it's that rich. You've got a ton of visitors coming into town. And quite frankly, for Georgia, this is probably the last big home game of the year in terms of the excitement and the atmosphere that you're going to get. Yes, you've got Missouri, like I said earlier in the show, struggling a little bit to find some consistency. You're not going to have that undefeated matchup. You're not going to be drawing College Game Day when Missouri comes into town. So I think that that's one that, there will be visitors and there will be good names on that list as well. I just think this is Georgia's most crucial recruiting weekend of the year, in my opinion. I think that this is an opportunity for them in season to kind of state their case, and really, if they're able to play with the same dominance that they have, really kind of impart that on these kids and say, look, Georgia's moving in the right direction. I think that could be really big for them this weekend. Let's see how they handle it. Dogs kick off with Kentucky, 3:30 on Saturday on CBS. We'll have full coverage for you over at DawgsHQ on all things recruiting and all things team. For myself and not Palmer Toms, I'm Jake Roos. Thank you guys for tuning into this edition of Dawg Walk Talk. We'll see you soon.